Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I appreciate all of you coming and hanging out with me on a Wednesday as we roll towards the Sweet 16. Encourage you, as always, to go subscribe to our podcast, Outkick Universe. I know the podcast has not been updating for Outkick the Show. We will get that taken care of. Got some new movement going on in that universe, but it's all in a positive direction, so I just wanted to let you guys know. Off the top, we got a lot to discuss here. The NFL has passed a new pass interference law. The AAF, the league that Johnny Manziel is playing in, the league that is trying to compete in the spring, is in danger of folding after 1 year. Tony Romo wants $10 million a year to sign with CBS and continue to broadcast games. And Keith Olbermann has come completely unhinged, maybe in the wake of Donald Trump and the Russia investigation, the Mueller report finding no collusion. So let's go ahead and dive in here and get rolling. First of all, let's start with the NFL pass interference law rule. I lost $60,000, $30,000 for me, $30,000 for Cousin Sal when the pass interference call was inexplicably missed at the end of the Rams and the Saints NFC Championship game. I am still bitter over that missed call, as you would be as well if it had cost you $30,000, more accurately at least $45,000, and potentially as much as $84,000 if I had actually been able to win, if the Saints had gone on to win the Super Bowl. At a minimum, I would have been able to hedge and made $45,000, so I would have been in pretty good shape. Look, but this is the right move, and I know it's in vogue to go out and rip the NFL for everything under the sun every time they do anything. I'm not sure any entity in sports gets more ripped than the NFL. But I got to be honest with you, they 100% got this one right. If you don't know already, they have expanded replay rules to allow the pass interference penalty to be challenged. And I think that is a substantial improvement in the game of football. It will still exist within the existing NFL challenge rules. That is, each coach gets 2 challenges per half, and if he wins both of them, he has added a third challenge. And to me, that makes an awful lot of sense. I think it makes a ton of sense. Inside of the final 2 minutes, it will be entirely a booth review on whether or not the pass interference call was accurate. I don't think it will add substantial amounts of time to the game. I don't think that it will in some way fundamentally alter what exists now in the game. It will just be like any other challenge. When a call is missed or a challenge occurs, we'll stop, we'll review the game, and we will come to a determination. And I think this is likely to make the game better. Why? Because when you look at when pass interference calls are made and their impact given the yardage involved, and when you look at overall penalty calls in general, 70% of the time when a call impacts the outcome of a game, it's occurring because of pass interference. And it is such a substantial call that getting it right, I think, makes a lot of sense. And it is, in fact, the one that should be addressed the most. I wish that everything was addressed, right? I wish if you called roughing the passer and it's clearly not roughing the passer, you could throw a flag. Much like you can, for instance, if there's a flag, I believe you can challenge if there's 12 men on the field or not, if they get it wrong and they throw a flag for it and they miscount. I think this will make the NFL game better. I think it'll make it stronger, and I applaud the NFL, and I also applaud the coaches and the GMs and the owners and everybody else for getting it right. Now, having said that, given my gambling luck, I also now presume that I will be the first person to lose money as a result of this rule being changed and as a result of the old rule. And I also bet that somehow the Saints will end up being the team that loses the game because of the change in rule. So I think if you look at this in general, the NFL got it right. We should applaud them for changing the game and making it better. And while it is oftentimes a cottage industry to just rip the NFL, I believe they got this right, and it will fit very well in the existing NFL instant replay framework. I actually wish, and I've said this for a long time, that college football would adopt the NFL instant replay system as well, because I think college football actually spends way too much time replaying all sorts of inconsequential plays, right? Because the NFL gets it right. They say, hey, you only get 2.5. And if you throw one flag and you're wrong, you don't get a third. Only if we screw up twice and you catch us on it, do you get a third challenge. I think college football gets this wrong because they replay and review all sorts of issues that really are not worth stopping the game for. So college, look, the NFL, whether you love or hate the NFL gets everything right, and the games last right at 3 hours. It is very rare for an NFL game to go substantially over 3 hours in duration. They've got it down to a science. Now, sometimes the game goes into overtime. You can't control that. Now, sometimes the game goes to 3:10. Sometimes it ends in 2:55. But the NFL gets it right. It's about a 3-hour game. College football, how about you guys? There are regularly 4-hour games. There are oftentimes 4.5-hour games. Sometimes games can go on 5 or 5.5 hours. So anybody who watches a lot of college football and a lot of the NFL, I think college football should adopt more of what the college does. More of what the NFL does and less of their own decision making. So all of that is off in a roll. Stop being stupid. Stop being stupid, anybody in the comments. I say occasionally I look over at the comments, and if you say something so stupid that literally it makes my head hurt, I'm going to block you, okay? Because then you're so stupid, you don't deserve to actually have your comment heard. The NFL, you can criticize it a lot. This is not going to lengthen overall games. The game is going to last right at 3 hours. And it lasted 3 hours before instant replay, and it's lasted 3 hours after instant replay. The NFL is phenomenally good at this. And all you negative Nancys out there, it's not just about the length of the NFL game, it's the flow of the game that's going to be ruined. That's my voice for people who overreact anytime there's a subtle alteration. It's going to be ruined. How will I be able to watch the NFL if they change the instant replay? It will be ruined. That's what you sound like. When I read your comment in that voice, that's what you sound like in my head. You sound like an absolute imbecile. That is my absolute imbecile voice. If your response to anything that has existed for 75 years is they've made this subtle alteration to something that has been popular for generations, and your response is, oh my God, it'll be ruined. I have no idea how they're going to deal with this. Then that is the voice you deserve, all right? We live in a hyperbolic society. The NFL subtly altering instant replay reviews for pass interference is not going to fundamentally alter the game of the NFL. And if you are talking about it being ruined, you are an idiot. All right? That is the truth of the matter. And that is life. All right? The AAF may fold. I think I told you this on either my radio show or my television show. On either my radio show or my television show, I said the AAF had major financial concerns. Johnny Manziel coming in, I think, has the potential to help this league quite a bit with its 10-game season. But the AAF had to bring in a big-time investor to be able to pay its players. And now the AAF's only real possibility of success, I believe, the only way that they are going to be able to solve anything is I think the AAF needs to sell out and merge with the XFL. Let me explain my rationale. Vince McMahon is stepping onto the stage next year with the XFL. It's already been reported out there where the XFL is going to air. It's going to be on ESPN and it's going to be on Fox. It's going to be on FS1. This is all out there. So I'm not breaking any news. John Ourand at the Sports Business Journal has already reported this. When they officially announce the XFL, that means the XFL is going to stride onto the spring football stage with big-time sponsorship from ESPN and Fox, two of the biggest brands in all of sports. It's going to have distribution on their major platforms that already have a lot of fans. And it's going to have the WWE to broadcast and endorse this product in a big way. So the XFL is going to launch and I think immediately make the AAF irrelevant. If Vince McMahon wants to have the stage completely to himself, I think he could buy out the AAF, make it so that the initial investors make a decent return on their initial investment. It wouldn't cost very much money. I think that he could buy it out for around $20 million, $25 million, and ensure that there was no competing spring football league. Why would he do that? One, to kind of put to rest the idea that there's going to be competition in the spring. Two, to avoid the AAF's implosion somehow hurting his brand's chances of success. I actually think the audience for the AAF, with the poor amount of overall attention it has received, demonstrates how much of a demand there is for spring football, particularly a league like the XFL, which has no age restrictions. Guys, I'm telling you right now, this is going to turn into a big deal because Vince McMahon and the XFL are going to be able to go to a guy like Trevor Lawrence and say, hey, Trevor, you can't play in the NFL for the next 2 years, but you theoretically right now could come play for Bob Stoops and the franchise that we have in the XFL. He can help get you ready for the NFL, and you can sign all of your apparel contracts. You can make tens of millions of dollars in advance before you even have to risk anything in college football. And maybe a guy like Trevor Lawrence says no, but I think there are a lot of college football stars who are freshmen or sophomores that would say, why would I stay on campus when I can go and immediately start making money and let all these surrounding people make me a lot of money in advance? I can sign a shoe deal, I can sign endorsement contracts in general, and I can focus 100% of my energy on becoming a big-time star in the pro level instead of having to worry about going to class and staying eligible. Now, I also think that a lot of players will say no to that, and I don't think it's going to hurt college football because, look, college football is really, it's not about the name on the back of the jersey. Just like college basketball is not about the name on the back of the jersey. I think what a lot of people miss is that the reason why college sports are popular is the name on the front of the jersey. And while the players might not be as good, your affinity for your favorite school is not going to diminish because the quarterback is different or the running back is different. It's about a connection to a region. It's about a connection to a particular state. It's about a connection to a particular piece of land. College football and college basketball is tribal, all right, in a way that pro sports aren't and never will be. So I don't see this as a major hit to either of those leagues. It's still going to be just as popular, I believe. It just gives the players an option. I actually think it's beneficial to college football because it ends any argument that you need to pay the players. The minute that a college football player has the opportunity to go pro and make six figures, you can no longer argue why aren't the college football players being compensated. Because you can say, well, if they don't want to go to college football, if they don't want to be student athletes on our campus, they can go to the XFL. There's a minor league system that would exist for the NFL, and I think it makes a lot of sense going forward. You could also have players that play their freshman and sophomore years and then go right into the XFL and are eligible to play potentially 2 seasons in the XFL, right? because you could play basically straight through. You play sophomore year college football, get drafted, roll right in to the XFL if they are smart, and then you could play for the XFL your sophomore year, come back again for only one more year, and you could get 2 paydays. Because you could play your junior year and then finish in time to go into the NFL draft. Now, maybe some of those guys would decide to sit out of some of the XFL games once they knew what their overall stature was going to be already. But the XFL, I think, would offer a lot of opportunity to guys who want to go pro after their freshman or sophomore years, and I think there'd be a decent market for it. So I think this would be would make a lot of sense. All right. Third topic here. Third topic. And by the way, that's forward thinking. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that. But if I run the XFL, I make the decision to buy out the AAF. I give the guys who invested in the AAF a little bit of property, a little bit of profit, and then I just throw away that idea that there's going to be any spring football competition, and I rely on the big megaphone of Fox and ESPN to help make my league popular. Now, here's the other thing that's going to help. Gambling. I think there are a lot of people out there that a well-distributed and well-run XFL that is easy to find the games on, where the lines are easy to find as well. I think there's a lot of people out there that would love to continue to gamble on football, particularly as it's adding legalization everywhere as we roll through the entirety of spring and you need something to gamble on. Tony Romo is asking for $10 million to be the lead college football announcer on CBS's Game of the Week. Romo's contract is up soon. I actually think that he's going to get $10 million. So far, the highest public salary that has ever existed to call an NFL football game is John Madden back in 1993 when Fox hired him away. All right? $8 million in 1993. I'm not being after taxes guy, but we do need adjusted for inflation guy to jump in here. My bet would be John Madden getting $8 million in 1993 would be something like paying a guy $13 million a year right now. Does anybody have an adjusted for inflation calculator that can go back to 1993 and try to determine what $8 million a year in 1993 now equates to 26 years later? My guess would be that it's around $13 million. Somebody can actually go and look at it. So I always think that you need to adjust salaries based on inflation-adjusted realities. But the truth of the matter is this. Somebody just said, you hit it spot on, $13.6 million. So if Romo gets $10 million, if I'm his agent, I'm arguing $10 million is actually still less than John Madden, but Romo has a lot of opportunities out there. He can do a large variety of things that are different than calling games, okay? So I think Romo's worth $10 million a year. I think his value to CBS is easily on that level. If you put it into math, the question is Tony Romo worth roughly $800,000 a game? I think the answer is yes. I think the answer is yes because I enjoy Tony Romo so much that I would be willing to watch a game more often with Tony Romo than without him. And let me explain why. I very frequently, I talked about this yesterday on the shows, I very frequently watch games in total silence by myself. And I do that because I think I, in my head, keep a better running commentary on the game than a huge number of people who get paid to actually call games. Like, this happens to me all the time. I put on a broadcast, I listen to the broadcasters, and I say, my God, this is making my head hurt. Number one broadcaster that makes my head hurt is not because she's a woman, it's because she's bad. Sean McDonough makes my head hurt too, but the number one is Beth Mowins. Beth Mowins is, it seems to me, every Saturday morning when I am hungover and I sit down on my couch to put on a sporting event, it seems like Beth Mowins is batting 1,000 on being the person who is calling that game. Like, I sit down, I plop up my feet on the couch, I hit the button to listen, and then boom, it's Beth Mowins calling the game at noon every single college football Saturday. I swear to God. I don't know how it's possible, but every single one that I go to first, the very first game that I go to, I'm like, I am so excited for college football. I got a bunch of money on this game. I bet the noon game every single Saturday almost. Boom. It's Beth Mowins, and she's calling the game. Now, I don't know about you guys, but 100,000% of the time, that happens to me. So I'll go straight mute. But I mute most announcers because there's a huge majority of them that drive me insane. I think Dick Vitale is a great guy. If you are rooting for a team that is in a game that Dick Vitale is calling, and it's not Duke and it's not Kentucky, I find it impossible to listen to him. I find it impossible to listen to Dick Vitale call a game. I think he's a great human being, but he screams and he cheers and he drives me insane. I immediately go mute. I wish there was a statistic to figure out who the most muted announcers are. Now, there are other guys I like. They're so good, I never even think about muting them. Like Kirk Herbstreit, to me, flawless. Tony Romo, flawless. My guy Charles Davis, who comes on the show regularly, flawless, right? There are lots of people, Joel Klatt, who's a buddy of mine too, flawless. There are some guys, Bill Walton, love Bill Walton, listen to him all the time. I think Tirico, pretty much flawless in his play-by-play delivery, right? And then there are old school guys that I love because they make so many errors. You guys know my love affair for Vern Lundquist. You know, I still like Al Michaels, still like Musburger, the old school guys. Charles Barkley, definitely have to leave it on for him. But there are, Bill Raftery is a great example of a guy who's just phenomenally good at what he does. Gus Johnson, when it's an exciting game, I listen along with Gus. I think Jay Billis is really good. Look, there are a lot of guys I like, but there's a huge percentage where I mute it. And so I am telling you that I don't believe I would ever mute Romo because he makes me enjoy the game more than I would without him. And I know it's controversial, but I like Gary Danielson. I like Nessler. I think they do a good job together. I loved Gary Danielson and Vern. Like somebody who makes me enjoy the experience and kind of marinate in the experience. And also sometimes the voice just seems like it fits, right? So everybody has different opinions in this, but that's my opinion. And so if I am willing to make that decision for Tony Romo, then I think there are a lot of other people out there that are willing to make that decision for Tony Romo. And importantly, this is a little bit like being a part of a team. If CBS loses Romo, do you know who they're going to lose him to? They're going to lose him to probably ABC or ESPN, maybe Fox, maybe NBC. You never know how the broadcast booth is going to get rearranged. And it's not just that you will lose Romo. It's that he will end up on somebody else's network. And somebody else's network then gets the benefit of Romo's talents. So it's not as if you can just sideline him. Somebody else is going to get him. And given how fast all this is moving, could be Amazon. Could be who knows? Who knows what companies are going to set it? It could be DAZN. Who knows what companies are going to step in and make a play there? So I think you have to give Tony Romo $10 million. Finally, I don't know if you saw this. I don't know if you saw this info, but my mind was blown on this. I try not to spend as much time on social media now. And I know that's ironic because most of you are coming in through either Facebook or Twitter, finding my articles on a regular basis. But if you remember a while back, Keith Olbermann came after me. Keith Olbermann came after me, and he was yapping and running like his Keith Olbermann voice at me. And a bunch of you tweeted me this, and I saw it, and I couldn't believe it. Keith Olbermann tweeted yesterday, this kid, you see the picture? This kid killed a white turkey. It's like an albino turkey. It's relatively rare. Mississippi teenager hunting, okay? And he went out and he tweeted, "It's rare and beautiful, so we should kill it. this pea-brained scumbag identifies himself, and then he said the kid's name, and we should do our best to make sure the rest of his life is a living hell, and the nitwit clown who wrote this fawning piece should be fired. I don't know about you guys, but I am starting to feel like the masses are done with social media outrage. That there is a cacophony of voices rising up and starting to ask the question that happened way before most of us, probably all of us listening or watching this right now, were born, which is in the Joe McCarthy hearings, when finally, as all of the red baiting and all the communist accusations were raining down, a senator said, "Have you no decency?" And it was like that was a crystal ball moment for many people out there that the outrage culture had officially exploded. And I think 10 years from now, we may go back in time and look at the Brett Kavanaugh hearing for the Supreme Court, and a lot of people are going to look at that and say, my God, that was an embarrassing moment for the American democratic process when you had elected senators looking through a high school yearbooks and quizzing a would-be United States Supreme Court justice on what his superlatives meant when he was 17 years old and in high school. And I think the idea that you would examine a drunken high school party and determine whether or not somebody deserves to be a senator 30 years later, 30 plus years later, a lot of reasonable people believe that that was fundamentally wrong. And so when I saw Olbermann's tweet there, I sat back and I said, imagine that this world has ever been allowed to exist to begin with. That where someone is a hunter and is a licensed hunter and has the right to kill a turkey, which if we didn't allow hunting, the turkey population would continue to explode, right? Leading to a food chain fallacy of a disastrous result. That you would be, as a grown man, in your mind thinking to yourself, I'm going to take my 1 million Twitter followers and I'm going to tell them to publicly shame this high school teenager who happened to shoot a turkey legally. And also, I want the person who wrote the article about the shooting to also be fired. And I'm going to think that that's a good thing and a proper thing and a right thing to do. Now, this leaves aside the absurd irony of the fact that Keith Olbermann did Boston Market commercials back in the day. Boston Market, a company which publicly kills millions of turkeys to be able to serve them, if you remember the Boston Market restaurant chain back in the day, to be able to serve them to people. You took their money when they professionally as a business exist to kill as many turkeys as they can to sell. And now you're outraged that a kid killed a turkey for his own personal consumption? It's really pretty wild. It is really pretty wild to even contemplate how far down the rabbit hole of ridiculousness we have gone in social media. But if you follow me on Twitter, as many of you do, at Clay Travis, you can go look at that. And I just want you to think, what is going on here? I think in many ways, and I'm very cautiously optimistic about this, that the sports culture is ahead of the national culture. And I think outrage culture in sports has started to die. Now, it's taken a long time, but I think outrage culture has finally started to die in the world of sports. I don't remember the last time that somebody really lost their mind in the world of sports. And so, as a result, I think the nation's culture has started to change in a way that is a lot more healthy and is not going to be governed by mob rule, and that insanity is not going to be the coin of the realm. And I am cautiously optimistic that that is finally starting to happen and that maybe this craziness has burned itself out and now it's going to turn mostly internecine, like the French Revolution back in the day, where all these identity politic-laden outrage police are in a position where they turn on each other and ultimately demand a purity test, which leads to all of them being guillotined. I think we started to see it in Virginia when the black lieutenant governor was accused of sexual assault by multiple black women, and Democrats had no idea what to do. Because they're like, how on the identity politics pyramid do we decide what to do here? If it was a white guy who had been accused of sexual assault on 2 black women, they would have immediately said that guy has to resign. But they were paralyzed when 2 identity politics collided. And I think that's what we're starting to see, is that their precedent and and their overall narrative is collapsing on itself. So think about that when you think about the Keith Olbermann story. Appreciate you listening to me talk about the AAF, talk about the NFL's new rule, talk about why Tony Romo, in my opinion, is worth $10 million. I appreciate all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'll be live on Lock It In a half hour. Kisses for all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show.